This is the International Soccer Preview, and we are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 17. We're looking at the squads of the 2023 Gold Cup. This episode is the full-length version for Trinidad and Tobago's players. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 17 on the players of the 2023 Gold Cup. So this episode covers Trinidad and Tobago's players. And just a couple of notes before we begin. This media cast is in two parts. So the first is an overview of the candidates for the squad and our guess as to their likelihood of making it. And the second part will be added on after the squad lists are released. So we're doing the first part in May, kind of a list of the candidates, and then the second part in June. And that will let you know who among the candidates actually did make it to the team and also how accurate we were in predicting it. Okay, so we're organizing this by positions. This is actually the first time we did Trinidad and Tobago. We did do the CONCACAF teams that made the final round of World Cup playoffs in 2022 and also the teams that made the World Cup in 2022. So some of them we've done twice. However, Trinidad and Tobago didn't reach either one. So it's our first go around with them. So as I started to say, we're organizing this by position. So we do realize that that's not always accurate as players do change positions. And we're expecting a few surprises in the June podcast, the second half of this podcast, actually probably the third of 2/3, and we'll cover the surprises as best we can, let you know who's injured and all that good stuff so that you have a good sense of who the players are once the tournament begins. Okay, well, we have been starting this podcast by looking at lineups they've had over the last few not lineups, but formations they've had over the last few games. But we began to kind of question what the point of that was. So I think this time we're just going to launch directly into the candidates. So let's begin with the manager. And so we have the same manager as the 2021 Gold Cup that they qualified for. They didn't qualify for the 2019 Gold Cup. So we only have the 2021 version to go on. And Yves Angus is the manager. So he was a player for Trinidad and Tobago from 1994 to 2005. In fact, one of their most capped players, 117 caps and 32 goals, a really good record there. And he was a player in the 2002 to 2005 Gold Cups and was actually not selected for the World Cup 2006 squad. So that was just a bit beyond his time. And he started the management career with Trinidad and Tobago as the interim manager. And it's a little unclear what's going on here because he is listed as their manager from 2021 to 2023, but I couldn't find a name for another manager. So I'm interpreting that to mean that he'll manage them through this tournament and then they'll seek another manager afterwards. Anyway, Angus Yves, the manager of Trinidad and Tobago. Let's take a look at goalkeepers. And we begin with a definite candidate in Marvin Phillip. Very experienced player, 38 years old. He has been with Trinidad and Tobago since 2007 and has 93 caps. So he plays in Trinidad and for Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago. He was actually I don't know if he was retired. He wasn't attached to any team after playing in India in 2019 and 20, and then kind of came back in 2023. So kind of not playing with the club for 3 years, it seems, and has come back. So we're expecting him. He was the starter and the captain in the 2021 Gold Cup, and I said that they didn't reach the Gold Cup in 2019. I don't know what I was on about there. It should be that they didn't reach the 2017 Gold Cup, but they did reach it in 2019. He was a starter there, and we're going to focus mostly on the recent tournament, though. Starter in the 2021 Gold Cup. So since then, he started 9 of their 13 games since the start of 2022 and subbed in for 1 and was on the bench for 4, including the last 2. So not saying for sure that he'll be a starter, but we think he's a definite candidate to make the squad. Next up, we have 2 likely candidates in Nicholas Frenderup. So Nicholas Frenderup is Danish by birth, and he currently plays for Ranheim in Norway, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself there. He's been with Trinidad and Tobago since 2019 and is 30 years old and just 9 caps, a bit tough for him to get in ahead of Marvin Phillip there. And he was on the squad for the 2021 Gold Cup as the backup keeper and appeared only in game 2, replacing Marvin Phillip there. And since that time, he has started 3 games, including the last 2 that Phillip was on the bench for of their 13 games. And he wasn't selected for 10 matches, though, so it looks like they were trying out other keepers. Nevertheless, he does seem to be the secondary keeper right now, but perhaps we'll see when we get to the Cup. Another likely candidate is Denzel Smith. So Denzel Smith is new to the squad since 2023, and he's 23 years old, and he has 2 caps and plays in Trinidad and Tobago. And he started 1 of their 13 games since the start of 2022, subbed in for 1 and was on the bench for 8. So not a starter, but definitely seems firmly on the team as a backup keeper there. And we have also a possible candidate in Adrian Fonset. So Adrian Fonset is 34 years old and has been with the team since 2016. And he actually has more caps than both of the others. He has 22 caps. And he plays in Trinidad and Tobago for Police FC. And he was also on the roster for the Gold Cup in 2021. I didn't mention actually that Denzel Smith was not on the roster for that. He was on the preliminary squad but didn't make the final cut. But Adrian Fonset was on the squad and but didn't see any action in the Cup. He did see action in the 2019 Gold Cup where he replaced the Marvin Phillip there for after game 1. In terms of his recent participation, he started 1 of their 13 games since the start of 2022 and subbed in for 1, but was not selected for 11 games. And so we think that he might be left off the squad this time since there seem to be 3 goalkeepers ahead of him. That's all we have for goalkeepers, so we move on to defenders. And we're going to start with a versatile defender. That generally means a player who kind of plays all over the field or all over the defense. And that is definite candidate Aubrey David. So Aubrey David is 32 years old, and he has been with Trinidad and Tobago since 2012 with 72 caps and 1 goal. He actually played a couple of games for the Guyana national team in 2012 and then through his loyalties over to TNT. He plays for AUCAS in Ecuador since 2023 and was with some of the top clubs in Costa Rica prior to that, and has been a part of many Gold Cups. In the 2021 Gold Cup, he was a starter, started and finished all 3 games there. And since then, he has started 10 of their 13 games and not selected for the other 3. So we think Aubrey David is a definite candidate, although we're not sure where he will appear in the defense because he plays a variety of roles. Okay, so now we move on to players who mostly do play in central defence or are coded as central defenders. And we have a definite candidate in Kareem Moses. So Kareem Moses has been with the team since 2012. And he has 16 caps and 1 goal. And he is 33 years old. So he's actually playing in Finland with a club called Jaro and was with another club in Finland, BPS. I want to point out that he was with FC Edmonton 2 times. That's where we're coming to you from, Edmonton in Canada. So we were happy to have Kareem Moses on our local team. However, he's never been selected for a Gold Cup, even though he's been on the team since 2012. He didn't make the final cut for the squad in 2013, and same thing in 2019. And so he's kind of been on and off the team. He was off the team for 4 years until he returned in March 2022 to start 8 of their remaining 12 games. So very much off the team and then very much on the team. He was also on the bench for 2 of their 12 games too. So he's been playing a lot, and we consider him now a definite candidate. We have a likely candidate in Justin Garcia. Justin Garcia has been with Trinidad and Tobago since 2019 and is 27 years old. He has only 12 caps, though, and no goals. He plays for Defence Force in Trinidad and Tobago. And he was a starter in the 2021 Gold Cup. However, he was subbed out at halftime of Game 1 and lost his starting position. He just came back as a substitute in Game 3 there. And since then, he started 3 of their 13 games since the start of 2020 and was on the bench for 1 of those and not selected for 9 games. So I'm actually thinking we've overrated him as a likely candidate and we should push him down to possible. In fact, I'm going to do that. I might have put him as likely if his 3 games had been recent, but I don't have that information in front of me. So we'll make him a possible candidate. And that puts him with a whole bunch of other possible candidates. So we have 3 others at this level. The first one is Sheldon Bateau. So Sheldon Bateau has been with the team since 2013, and he has 51 caps and 4 goals. So like a lot of the players we've done so far, he's kind of working towards his retirement age. He's 32 years old. And he currently plays for Samsunspor in Turkey and played for a couple of teams in Belgium. I think he was loaned to a team in Belgium there. He was on the squad for the 2015 Gold Cup, but hasn't made a squad ever since then. He was on the preliminary squad for the Gold Cup in 2021, but didn't make the final cut. However, he has started 4 of their 13 games since the start of 2021 and was on the bench for 2 others. But he wasn't selected for their last 4 matches. So a fairly big name for Trinidad and Tobago, but doesn't look like he's fully in the picture right now. We have Sheldon Bateau as a possible candidate. At the same level is Leland Archer. So Leland Archer is fairly new to the team since 2021, even though he's 27 years old, so a bit of a late starter with them there. Only 3 caps, so obviously struggling to get onto the squad. He was selected for the 2019 Gold Cup, but he was injured, so didn't make it. And then he was on the preliminary squad for the 2021 Gold Cup, but didn't make the final cut there either. So has never played in a tournament. And he didn't start any of their games since 2022, but he was subbed in for 1 and then on the bench for 3 others. That included the last game. So we bumped him up to a possible candidate because his involvement has been recent. Also at the possible level, and a player who has never played in a cup, is Josiah Trimmingham. So Josiah Trimmingham is 26 years old. He's been with the team all the way since 2017, but has only earned 5 caps in that time. So he wasn't even selected for the preliminary squad for the 2021 Gold Cup. He was absent during that time, but he returned in March 2023 after a 2-year absence and started 2 of their remaining 4 games. So in terms of recent participation, he's maybe a bit higher than the other 2, but has less experience with the team overall. Okay, we have a possible but unlikely candidate in Anthony Herbert, and he's new to the team since 2022, and is a young player, or fairly young, at 25 years old. And he got his first cap in September 20. I'm laughing at myself because I thought he was younger, but 25. He plays for Haka in Finland, and he got his first cap in September 2022. But was subbed in for one. He was subbed in and on the bench for one, but then not selected after that. So possible but unlikely. And a couple of players who seem to be off the team is Radanfar Abu Bakr. So Radanfar Abu Bakr has been with the team since 2009. Was with the team since 2009 and has 39 caps and 2 goals. So it is possibly aging out at 36 years old, even though he's still playing at the club level. Actually, exactly like the goalkeeper Marvin Phillips, he was kind of unattached to a team since 2020, and then in 2023 joined Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago. So both of those players perhaps coming out of a bit of retirement or a break in their career. He was on the team, Radanfar Abu Bakr, in 2021. He actually started and finished game 1 and then was relegated to the bench. And he last appeared for the national team in June 2022. So that's about a year now that he has not been called up. And we think he seems to be off the squad. Finally, off the squad, we think, is Jelani Peters. He only played in 2021, 4 caps in 2021. He plays for teams in the USA, Memphis 901 and Pittsburgh Riverhounds before that. And he was part of the 2021 squad, actually, just as the previous player started game 1 and then lost his starting position. No, actually, he started game 2 and then lost his starting position. And he last appeared in the Gold Cup. So we think Jelani Peters is out of the picture now. Okay, that is central defenders. And we begin our look at left backs with one definite candidate in Noah Powder. So Noah Powder has been with Trinidad and Tobago just since 2021, but has 16 caps and 2 goals. He's just 22 years old, and he plays for Northern Colorado Hailstorm in USA. So that's a team a bit down in the divisions in America, but he was part of the squad for the 2021 Gold Cup, subbed into game 1 at halftime and then gained a starting position for the remaining games. And since then, he started 8, or since the beginning of 2022, he has started 8 of their 13 games, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2. So just 1 game there that he wasn't selected for. And so we consider Noah Powder a definite candidate. We have Keston Julian as a likely candidate. So Keston Julian has been with the team since 2018. I keep saying the team because I don't want to say Trinidad and Tobago time and time again. Maybe I'll go with TNT. Anyway, Keston Julian is 24 years old and has been with the team since 2018. Just 12 caps in that time, so he didn't make the final cut for the 2019 and 2021 Gold Cup. So this would be his first, but he looks likely to make it since he started 8 of their 13 games since the start of 2022. And However, he did miss 3 of the last 4 games, so that's maybe a strike against him. He is unattached right now, but he was playing for Sheriff Tiraspol. That's the biggest team in Moldova and in Slovakia before that, so a bit of a globetrotter. Keston Julian, but we'll keep him as a likely candidate, having started 8 of their last 13 games. We have 2 possible candidates. I'm going to make my graphic bigger on the YouTube there. We have Tristan Hodge. Tristan Hodge has been with TNT since 2016, and he is 28 years old, and he has 25 caps and no goals. He plays for Hartford Athletic in the USA. That's a recent transfer in 2023 from Colorado Springs Switchbacks there, and he was part of the 2021 Gold Cup there. That was his first tournament. He started all 3 games, and he has since started 3 of their last 13 games, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 1. So not selected for 8 of the 13 games. So we consider him just a possible candidate, maybe with a bit of an edge since he was a starter in the last Gold Cup. We also have Jamil Neptune. Jamil Neptune has been with TNT since 2018 and has 6 caps, and he is 29 years old, so kind of trouble getting onto the team, and he didn't make the 2019 or 2021 Gold Cups. In fact, he returned after an almost 3-year absence in June 2022 and started 1 of their remaining 9 games, but he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 3. So he has kind of been in and around in recent times. So we consider Jamil Neptune a possible candidate. We have a possible but unlikely candidate in Andre Raymond. So Andre Raymond is a young player. He's 22 years old, and he's been with TNT since 2023. Just 1 cap, but he plays for a small club in Portugal. So he got his first cap in March 2023, but he wasn't selected for the 3 games after that. And on the way out, it seems, is Mikhail Williams. So Mikhail Williams is an experienced player with the squad. He's 32 years old and has been with the team since 2012. 37 caps and 1 goal for Mikhail Williams, and he's currently with Chattanooga Red Wolves, another team kind of in the lower divisions in the USA. But he's been part of every Gold Cup since 2015, and in 2021 he was subbed into game 1 at halftime and gained a starting position for the team. However, he last appeared for the team in June 2022, so hasn't appeared in the last year. So we consider him to be off the team. But I'll bet you in the second part of the podcast that a couple of these players will come back, because that often seems to happen. And Mikhail Williams looks a candidate to possibly do that. But also off the team is Ross Russell, or Ross Russell Jr., and he has been with the team since 2019, but last appeared in the 2021 Gold Cup. He was a starter in that cup, but he subbed out at halftime and lost his starting position to Mikhail Williams, I believe. And we don't expect to see him. Maybe we'll add more details on these less likely players if they actually do come back. But for now, we'll move on to right backs. And here we have a definite candidate in Alvin Jones. So Alvin Jones has been with TNT since 2014 and is 28 years old, and he has 43 caps and 2 goals. So he recently returned to Trinidad and Tobago, Club Sando, since 2023, but he too was with kind of lesser USA clubs, Forward Madison in the USA before that. And he was a starter in the 2021 Gold Cup started and finished all 3 games there. And then he started 7 of their last 13 games, and he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 3. So he's only missed 2 games, 2 of 13 games since the start of 2022, and we consider him a definite candidate. A likely candidate is Jesse Williams. So Jesse Williams is 22 years old and been with TNT since 2021, but has 10 caps in that time, and with a slightly bigger club in the USA, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. So not a top tier club, but I think a bit of a bigger club than some of the ones we've been talking about. Jesse Williams was a starter in the Gold Cup. At least he started games 1 and 3 there. And since then, he has started 5 of their last 13 games, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 1, but not selected for 6 matches, including their last 2, which is always a bit worrying. But we still have him as a likely candidate. That's Jesse Williams as a right back. Also, Shannon Gomez as a right back. Shannon Gomez has actually been in and around the team quite a while, since 2015. He is 26 years old, but just has 8 caps. And he plays for San Antonio FC in the USA, but has never made it to a Gold Cup. So he was on the preliminary squad in 2021, but didn't make it. He returned, though, after a year-long absence in June of 2022, and then started 4 of their remaining 10 games, as well as subbing in for 1 and being on the bench for 1. So his recent participation puts him for us as a possible candidate. Shannon Gomez. Okay, and now we have general defenders. That's a bit different than the versatile defenders we saw above. Versatile defenders are probably veterans who we've seen kind of in various positions. The general defenders are generally new players to the team, so we're not really clear on what position they are. So we have Kareem Riley, who's new to the team since 2023. And he earned 2 caps, even though he's 25 years old, so a bit late in joining the team. He plays for Club Sando in Trinidad and Tobago, and got his first cap in March 2023, and then started 1 game and was subbed in for 1 game, but wasn't selected for the last 2 matches. But recent participation, we consider him a possible candidate. And then possible but unlikely is Jelani Felix. He has been with the team since 2019, but only has 1 cap. And he is with Defence Force in Trinidad and Tobago, so playing locally, and is 29 years old, so kind of a last gasp for him to get on the team. He was actually on the preliminary squad for the 2021 Gold Cup, but didn't make it. And he returned after a 3.5-year absence in March 2023 and appeared on the bench there, but then wasn't selected for the 3 games afterwards. So kind of popping up his head in a last effort to maybe get to a tournament for the national team, but we consider it unlikely for Jelani Felix. Okay, and the last player I have here actually is not a general defender, but a right back. So we'll just pop back to the position of right back and mention Isaiah Garcia, who we consider a player who seems to be off the squad, actually, and he's never participated in a Gold Cup. He apparently was, I have conflicting sources on whether he took part in a friendly in January of 2023, but we'll just leave it at that, because he's never really, he only has 3 caps and has never really made an impression on the squad. Okay, let's move on to midfielders, and Here we begin with defensive midfielders, and I'm actually going to start with a player leaving the team, and that's Kaleem Highland, who we consider seemingly off the squad. It's not clear whether he's retired from international soccer because he was with a couple of clubs in Saudi Arabia, but is currently unattached. And he's a real veteran with the team, but he is aging out. He is 34 years old, so maybe not as old as I thought. He's been with Trinidad and Tobago since 2008 and has 94 caps and 4 goals. So he's been a part of many Gold Cup squads since 2013. And most recently, though, in 2021, he would have been selected, but he was injured in the qualifying game before the tournament. And then his last appearance was shortly after that in July 2021. So they're losing a veteran there in Kaleem Highland. And who do they have to replace him? Well, a likely candidate is Nabil Hackshaw. Nabil Hackshaw has been with TNT since 2015 and is 27 years old with 32 caps and 2 goals. And he plays for Oakland Roots in the USA since 2023 and was with Indy 11, so USA teams going back to 2016. And in the 2021 Gold Cup, he was a substitute, but then he started and finished game 2, then didn't appear in game 3, so kind of in and out there. Since then, he started 7 of their last 13 games, subbed in for 1 of those, but then not selected for 5 matches, including their last 4. So, yes, we think it's a bit better than possible. So we put him at the likely level, especially since he seems the most likely candidate there for defensive midfielder. We also have a possible candidate in the position, and that's Michel Poon-Angeron. Michel Poon-Angeron is 22 years old, and he's been with the team since 2021, but a respectable 10 caps in that time. He played in Trinidad and Tobago with Port of Spain, but he was with Banfield's B team in Argentina before that. And he wasn't part of the 2021 Gold Cup squad. He was on the preliminary squad there. But since 2022, he has started 2 of their 13 games, and he was also subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1. So that puts him as a possible candidate for us, Michel Poon-Angeron. And that's all they have for defensive midfielders. And so it may be that one of the central midfielders plays in that position, and we do have a definite candidate for the central midfielder position, and that's John Paul Rochford. So John Paul Rochford has been with TNT since 2019 and is just 23 years old. He has 13 caps and 2 goals, and he also plays in for Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago. Not part of the 2021 Gold Cup. He was on the preliminary squad, but I should say that was a really big preliminary squad of 60 players. So it doesn't really say that much that they made the squad. Maybe that they were kind of around at that time, but we know that since he's been around since 2019. Anyway, he started 3 of their 13 games since the start of 2022, but he was subbed in for 8 of them and on the bench for 1. So only 1 of their last 13 games was he not selected for. So not sure he's going to be a starter, but we definitely think he will be on the squad for the Cup. And then we jump down to the possible level, and we have Leston Paul. And Leston Paul has been on the team since 2014, and he is 33 years old with 35 caps and 0 goals. And he plays for Memphis 901 in USA. I've seen that name pop up quite a bit with Trinidad and Tobago. I think they may have 3 or 4 players on Memphis 901. Leston Paul was part of the Gold Cup squad in 2019, but not for the 2021 squad. He really wasn't around in the picture at that time. But after a 2.5-year absence, he returned in June 2022 and started 3 of their remaining 10 games, and was also subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1. So, he 6 of the last 10 matches he's been involved in. So we consider him a possible candidate, Leston Paul. Gianni Fortune, also a possible candidate. He has been with TNT since 2021 and is just 20 years old and has 4 caps and 0 goals. So he recently started playing for the A team for Atlanta United in the USA. That's since 2023. He had been with the B team since 2020 and really wasn't in the picture for Trinidad and Tobago until after the Gold Cup. He wasn't selected for the preliminary squad, that big preliminary squad for the Gold Cup. So he started 2 of their last 13 games and subbed in for 1. So again, kind of working his way into the picture, but maybe it's a bit too soon for him. We nevertheless have a Gianni Fortune as a possible candidate. We have 2 more possible candidates to go, and Daniel Phillips is one of them. So he has been with TNT since 2021 and is 22 years old with 7 caps. And he plays for St. Johnstone in Scotland and was with Watford in England before that, although I believe he was mostly loaned out for Watford. I'm not sure if he played any games for them. And he is a kind of a recruit from England who was on the preliminary squad for the 2021 Gold Cup, but didn't make the final cut. And he started 2 of their last 13 games, but was also subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 3. So involved in about half of their recent games was Daniel Phillips, who we consider a possible candidate. And finally, among the possibles is Andre Rampersad. So Andre Rampersad is brand new to the team, even though he's 28 years old. And he got his first cap in 2023. He has 2 caps now. That was in March 2023. He started both of their last 2 games. That's to May 2023. We're doing this podcast at the end of May here. So he's played in their last 2 games. And I didn't mention his club. He's with HFX Wanderers in Canada, Halifax Wanderers. So new to the squad. He actually was selected for the 60-man preliminary squad in 2021, but wasn't heard from, as I mentioned, until March 2023. So named to the squad, but had never played a game for them in 2021. Okay, we finished with one candidate who seems to be off the squad, and that's Kevon Goddard. And we won't dwell on him too much since he only had 9 caps since 2018. We'll just mention him by name. He was selected for the 2021 preliminary squad, but hasn't appeared for the national team since June 2022. So always on the outskirts there, Kevon Goddard. All right, well, that brings us to the end of central midfielders, and we have just one candidate for left midfield, or one candidate who at least is coded as a left midfield, and that is possible candidate Dwayne Muckett. So Dwayne Muckett has been with the team since 2018, and he's 27 years old, and he has 18 caps and 1 goal. And he recently moved back to Trinidad and Tobago for Port of Spain, and he was another player with Memphis 901 in the USA. So has come back home. So he's never really fully integrated himself into the squad, He was on the bench in 2019 and then appeared in only one game in 2021, in the 2021 Gold Cup. And recently he started 2 of their 13 games since the start of 2022, was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1. So honestly, that's about as much participation as he's got with the national team is in recent times. So we consider Dwayne Muckett a possible candidate. Moving on to right midfielders, we only have 2 candidates who seem to be off the team. The first one is Hashim Arsia. So Hashim Arsia has been with the team since 2012, but just 17 caps. And he's also well into his 30s. But he was a starter in the 2021 Gold Cup. After trying to get onto the team since 2012, finally showed up at a tournament in 2021 and as a starter, but last appeared for the national team in January 2022. So he seems to be off the team. And finally, we have Dylan Nicholson, who seems to be off the team too, and he only has 4 caps for Trinidad and Tobago. So he returned after a 4-year absence in March 2022, but then hasn't been called up again since June of that year. So we won't go into detail too much on Nicholas Dillon there, as he seems to be off the squad. Okay, let's move on to left wingers. So a bit thin on the right and left midfield position. Even a bit thin on central midfielders, really, because you need a few of those. But left wingers, they have a bit more to choose from. So we begin with a definite candidate in where am I? Left wingers. Okay, sorry. In Rion Moore. Rion Moore has been with TNT since 2018 and is 26 years old with 20 caps and 5 goals. So he plays for Defence Force, one of the other big teams in Trinidad and Tobago, and has mostly played locally throughout his career. And he was selected for the 2021 Gold Cup and actually started 2 of the 3 games and subbed into the other one, and has since started 3 of their 13 games since the start of 2020, but he was subbed in for 8 and on the bench for 1. So just one of their last 13 games that he wasn't called up for, which is why we consider Rion Moore to be a definite candidate. We also have a likely candidate in Ryan Telfer. So Ryan Telfer has been with the team since 2019 and is 29 years old, so a bit late to join the squad there, but he has earned 21 caps and 8 goals. He was actually born in Canada, so maybe he was recruited. A lot of these Caribbean teams kind of went on a recruitment over the last few years, kind of looking for players with a connection to their country. Jamaica looking mostly in England, but TNT have found a couple in Canada, I think, and Ryan Telfer is one of them. So he plays. He recently moved to Miami FC in the USA in 2023, and was with Columbus Crew's B team prior to that. And he was part of the 2021 Gold Cup, where he was subbed into a couple of games, and recently has started 5 of their 13 games since the start of 2022, although he wasn't selected for 8 matches in a row. So a couple of games at the beginning of 2022 and then a couple of games recently. And it's really because of those recent games that we have him as a likely candidate. And the final left winger that we're going to look at is Marcus Joseph, and he is at the possible level. And he's been with TNT since 2013 and is 32 years old with 28 caps and 7 goals. So he's actually playing in India at the moment with Mohammedan, not a team I'm familiar with in India. He's played for a couple of teams since moving from Trinidad and Tobago in 2019, and had a bit of trouble getting into the squad until finally getting there in 2021. So that was his first tournament, and he was subbed into game 2 at halftime and then went on to start game 3 there. And in terms of recent participation, hasn't started any of the last 13 games, but was on the bench for 1 and subbed in for 4 others. So not really heavy participation in the team there, but enough for us to consider Marcus Joseph a possible candidate at left wing. On the right wing, we have Cale Overy as a likely candidate. So Cale Overy is really new to the team and really young too. So just got his first cap this year in 2023 and is 19 years old. But he has 4 caps. So he has played 4 of their 5 games in 2023. And was on the bench. 3 of their 4 games in 2023 and was on the bench for the other. So he looks promising. He was born in France. He actually played a game for St. Martin, and he played that game this year. This is kind of funny. He played in January of this year, and the team he was playing against was Trinidad and Tobago. So he played for St. Martin in January, and then in May he was playing for the team that he had played against in January. I'm sure I'm not saying this as efficiently as I could be, but anyway, there we have it. So he is with Sporting Kansas City's B team in the USA. Really, he's just been with B teams throughout his whole career, but at 19 years old, that's not a long career. So he really looks like a promising candidate, and it's interesting that he's chosen Trinidad and Tobago because in addition to being born in France and playing for St. Martin, he was also on USA's under-17 team. So wow, he had a lot of choices and chose TNT. Kaylee Overy, I think an upcoming player for TNT who might emerge in this tournament. A possible but unlikely candidate is Jamoul Francois. So Jamoul Francois only has 4 caps since 2017 and kind of popped up in March 2023, but just for 1 game. So we consider him an unlikely candidate. Jamoul Francois. So that's the end of right wingers, and we just have one more general midfielder to talk about. And that's because the player is quite new to the team, so we're not sure what position in the midfield he would play. Anyway, his name is Justin Sadu, and we have him as a possible but unlikely player. So much ado about nothing here. He did return after a 4-year absence to sub in for 1 game, and he was on the bench for 4 games, but not selected for 8 others. So I wonder if I'm being a bit tough here saying possible but unlikely, but I think a lot of those 8 games that he wasn't selected for were towards the end, and the ones he played in were towards the beginning. The description seems like possible, but for some reason we chose possible but unlikely. Anyway, we'll correct that in the second half of the second part of the media cast if we turn out to be wrong. Meanwhile, we're going to move on to forwards, and they definitely have a lot of selection for attacking midfielders. None at the definite level, though. So the first one is Judah Garcia. No, hang on. I'm gonna go with Jovan Jones first here. So the first one we'll talk about is Jovan Jones. They're both at the likely level, both Jones and Garcia, but Jovan Jones is more of a veteran. with the squad. So he is 31 years old and has been with TNT since 2010 with 87 caps and 12 goals. So Jovan Jones has been with Inter Miami until recently. He was actually kind of halfway between the A and B team there, but now he's unattached and possibly moving into retirement, though he seems to have a few years left. Anyway, he's been a loyal servant for Trinidad and Tobago with on Gold Cup squad all the way from 2013. But not in the 2021 Gold Cup, surprisingly, on the preliminary squad, but didn't make the final cut there. And since then, he started 3 of their last 13 games, and he was subbed in for 2. But the reason he missed 3 games was due to an injury. So the first 3 of those 13 games he was injured for. So perhaps would have participated a bit more. But given that he's such a veteran, we put him at the likely level. But I do see he's kind of been working his way off the team a little bit since 2015. He was a starter in that Gold Cup and then a sub in 2019 and not selected in 2021. So perhaps more a possible than likely candidate. But we'll leave him where he is and move on to talk about Judah Garcia. So Judah Garcia has been with Trinidad and Tobago since 2018, and he is 22 years old, and he has 15 caps and 3 goals. And he, like his brother, plays for AEK Athens in Greece. He's with the B team, and he was actually with a team in India before that, so a real globetrotter. For the 2019 and 2021, no, hang on. For the 2019, he was on the preliminary squad and didn't make the final cut. For the 2021 Gold Cup, he would have been selected, but was another player who was injured in the qualifying game before the tournament. So hasn't been involved in a tournament. But he has started 5 of their 13 games since the start of 2022, and he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2. So we consider Judah Garcia a likely candidate. We also have a likely candidate in Malik Khan. So Malik Khan is very young. He is 19 years old, and he's been with the team since 2022. But he has 5 caps, and he moved to Minnesota United's B team in 2022. He was selected, although he had never been called up for Trinidad and Tobago. He was selected for the 60-man preliminary squad in 2021 for the Gold Cup there, but not making the final cut. And he got actually his first cap for them in January 2022. And although he hasn't started any of their last 13 games, he was subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 2. And among the 6 games he was absent for, 4 of them were due to injury. So only 2 games that he was legitimately not selected for. So Malik Khan, a young player who we consider likely. And finally, we have Kevin Molino, and we would have him at the possible level, but we have an injury kind of flag on him. So I'll give the biological or the bio data, and then talk about his injury. So a veteran with the team since 2010. Kevin Molino is 33 years old now, with 57 caps and a solid record of 23 goals. So that looks like around just under 40% there. A good scoring record for the national team. And he's been with Columbus Crew in the United States since 2021. But in 2023, he was kind of demoted to the B team, at least for some of the time. So that's not a good sign. He was part of the 2013 Gold Cup. I don't want to go into those past details, though. So I'll just jump straight to 2021, where he was a substitute in games 1 and 3. uh, um, for the 2021 Gold Cup. And he only started one of their last 13 games and was subbed in for one. But he was out with two separate injuries, including the last three matches. So initially, he was out with a knee problem, and then it was listed as out for knee surgery in March. So if he's had surgery in March, it's hard to see him coming back by June. So we have to move Kevin Molino to the injured list. And there wasn't a kind of a report on when he was due back, but to me that looks like he would be out for the tournament. But we'll update that in the second part of the podcast. We have three other possible candidates, though. One is Andre Fortune. And Andre Fortune has been with the team since 2019. And he's sometimes called Dre Fortune, by the way. And he's 26 years old. And I'm sorry, I'm seeing an injury report for him too. I'll get to that in a second. He has 11 caps, and he recently, or in 2022, moved to Estonia, playing for a team in Estonia. And prior to that was another one of those with Memphis 901 in the USA. And in the 2021 Gold Cup, he was a substitute, so subbed into Game 2, just 16 minutes in there, and then he went on to start Game 3. But I'm a bit preoccupied here by this injury doubt. So he did start 2 of their 13 games since the start of 2022, and he also was out with 2 separate injuries for 8 games, and is off the squad. But I have some indication in my head that he's back in action. Maybe I looked at his club record. He was out injured for the March games. But anyway, I'm going to report him as injured because in their most recent national team game, at least, he was injured. But I kind of suspect that he will be back for the Cup. But we'll have to look into that and get back in the second part of the media cast here. Let's move on to the next possible candidate, which is Jomal Williams. So Jomal Williams has been with the team since 2015 and is 29 years old, and he has 21 caps and 3 goals. So attacking midfielder Jomal Williams, and he's playing in El Salvador and has actually for quite a while played in El Salvador since 2019. And he was a starter in the 2019 Gold Cup, but not selected for the 2021 Gold Cup on the preliminary roster there, but not making the final cut. And yes, he was off the team from November 2019 until his return in March 2023, where he didn't start any of the remaining 4 games, but he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1. So working his way back into the team. And because that's recent participation, we put Jomal Williams as a possible candidate here. And the last possible candidate is Matthew Ooling. So Matthew, they probably say Wooling there, but he, I don't know why I got hung up on the name. Now I just confused myself as to where I'm at. Okay, Matthew Ooling. I'm going to say it the way I learned to say it in Korea, although that is a Chinese name. He is 26 years old and has been with the team since 2019, but only 6 caps in that time. And he recently returned to Miami United in the USA in 2023, his second stint with them, having been with the team in Iceland in the year before that. And he started one of their 13 games since the start of 2022, and then was subbed in for 2. So not heavy participation there, but we consider him a possible candidate here. Okay, and the final attacking midfielder we look at is Nathaniel James, who we consider possible but unlikely. Brand new to the team, though, since 2023, and just 19 years old. But he did earn 2 caps. He was actually on the preliminary squad for the Gold Cup in 2021, although he had never stepped onto the field or even been on the bench for the national team. He didn't make the cut there, but he got his first cap in March 2023. And although he didn't start any games, he was subbed in for 1 or 2. Actually, my information is a bit conflicting here. Anyway, he played in 2023. Nathaniel James. So again, that is recent participation, but we're not convinced that he would be a possible candidate. So we put him as possible but unlikely. That's Nathaniel James, the youngster. Okay, we don't have any secondary strikers to look at, so we move on finally to forwards, and they don't have an awful lot here, no definite candidates. So Levi Garcia is the likely candidate, or the only one at the likely level. Levi Garcia, as we mentioned when we talked about his brother Judah, plays for AEK Athens in Greece. And while Judah is with the B team, he's with the A team. So that's since 2020, and he was in Israel before that and Netherlands before that, so he gets around. Levi Garcia is only 25 years old, but has been with the team since 2016 with 39 caps and 8 goals. And he was a starter in the 2019 Gold Cup, but he wasn't part of the team for the 2021 Gold Cup. Part of the reason for that is that he had received a red card in qualifying. I don't know whether that meant he was suspended for the game. But anyway, he was on the preliminary squad, but not selected for the final squad. So a bit unusual there, because he does seem to be one of their top players even at that time. So I might have to look into that a little bit more. But anyway, since the start of 2022, he started 8 of their 13 games. However, he was not selected for 5, including the last 4 matches. So not sure what's going on there, Levi Garcia. But because he is one of their biggest names right now, we consider him a likely candidate. Okay, we have a possible candidate in Rundle Winchester. So Rundle Winchester has been with the team since 2013, but has only managed 6 caps in that time. So really a part-time worker for the Trinidad and Tobago national team. He's 29 years old. With just 6 caps, and interestingly, he's played in a bunch of interesting countries, mostly in Malta, but he's also played in Libya and Honduras, which is not that unusual. But recent history is kind of interesting, playing for several clubs in Malta. He has never made a tournament, and in fact, I didn't even have him listed for 2021 Gold Cup because I thought he was off the team at that time. But he returned after a 5.5-year absence and started the last 2 of their remaining games. So really confusing us as to whether he's on the team or off the team. He comes back for the last 2 games. I shouldn't, I made a mistake there. He did actually play in the 2015 Gold Cup. He was just on the bench there. But yeah, has been off the team for almost 6 years there. And suddenly is back, starting the last 2 games. So we'll have to see. I think we have a couple of friendlies that we can look at in June that may shed some light on the status of some of these players. So we can maybe update based on that information. Okay, moving on, we have a possible but unlikely candidate in Kadeem Corbin. And he has been with the team since 2015, but only has 4 caps and 1 goal. So a bit like Rundle Winchester there, kind of just pops up here and there. He's 27 years old and he plays in Trinidad and Tobago. And he was on the roster for the 2015 Gold Cup. Actually, very similar pattern to Rundle Winchester. And he outdoes him here. Rundle Winchester was off the squad for 5.5 years. Kadeem Corbin was off for 7.5 years. And then he came back in March 2023 to start one game and was on the bench for one game. But in his case, he wasn't selected for the last two matches. So a little less likely, it seems, than Rundle Winchester. We have Kadeem Corbin at the possible but unlikely level. And finally, well, actually not finally, because we have a couple of general forwards, but finally in this category, we have Isaiah Lee, who seems to be off the squad. He was a bench player in the 2021 Gold Cup, just appeared briefly at the end of Game 3 there, and that was his last appearance for the national team. So he seems well and truly off the squad, Isaiah Lee. Even though he's not that old, I must say, he's only about 24 years old there. Okay, and sorry, we do have a couple of general attackers. These are players quite new to the squad, so we don't really know. What position they are. So it could be anywhere from a winger to attacking midfielder to a forward. And the first one is Real Gill. So we're just going to call him a striker for now. Real Gill got his first cap and goal, I might add, with the team in that January game against St. Martin. But he hasn't appeared since then, so didn't appear in any of the May games. So Real Gill we consider possible but unlikely. And the other one is Samari Powder. So Samari Powder got his first appearance on the bench in March 2022, but then didn't appear after. He had 2 bench appearances. Anyway, he didn't appear in the last 10 matches. So the United States-born Samari Powder, not established on the team and doesn't look like he'll make this cup here. He's 22 years old, so he still has a bit of time to work with. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the first part, and we will be back in June, and we will fill in some of the details. So we will see you then. Bye-bye. It's June, and welcome back to the second part of the media cast. Welcome if you're joining us from the first part, so it's a month later for you in a blip. And if you're joining us for the short version, I will just summarize what we did in the first part, which was we made a list of basically players that have recently played for Trinidad and Tobago and categorized them according to their position and also according to their likelihood of making the squad, mostly based on their participation over the last couple of years. So now we are going to go through that list again. And we have the preliminary roster. It's a 58 preliminary squad for Trinidad and Tobago. And we have the 23-man final squad. So we'll tell you who made each of those. So we're going to go back to the beginning here. And we begin, the manager, Angus Eve, remains the same. And so we will consider him as having made the squad. And next we have Philip Marvin as a definite candidate for goalkeeper. So he was our only definite candidate, and he did make the final squad. And we had 2 likely candidates in Nicholas Frenderup and in Denzel Smith. And both of those made the squad, so very much as expected there. We had a possible candidate with Adrian Fonset. He did not even make the preliminary squad, Adrian Fonset. And we move on to defenders. And we had one kind of versatile defender in David Aubrey, who we considered a definite candidate, and he did make the final squad. And among the central defenders, we had one definite and then four possible. So we'll begin with the definite candidate, which was Kareem Moses, and he is selected to the squad. And among the possible candidates, I guess I wouldn't be surprised if one or two of them went, and one or two of them did. So I'll tell you who made the squad: Sheldon Bateau and Leland Archer, both making the final squad. The other two candidates were Justin Garcia and Josiah Trimmingham, and both of those players only made the preliminary squad. Also making the preliminary squad is our possible but unlikely candidate, Anthony Herbert. So he is still around, but not quite there making the squad. And then we had two players who seemed to be off the squad, Radanfa Abu Bakr, and he did not make the preliminary squad. But the other one, Jelani Peters, who we considered off the squad, was actually selected for the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. On to left backs, we had definite candidate Noah Powder. So a bit of a surprise here, as he was only selected for the preliminary squad. And also our likely candidate, Julian Keston, not selected for the preliminary squad even. And so we're down to our possible candidates, and only one of them made it. It was Tristan Hodge. So a bit of surprise there in the left back position. The other two candidates we had, one candidate at the possible level was Jamil Neptune. He made the preliminary squad, and our possible but unlikely candidate Andre Raymond made the preliminary squad. Mikel Williams seemed to be off the squad, and that proves true as far as this goes. He was not selected even for the preliminary squad. But the other player seemingly off the squad, Ross Russell Jr., at least made the preliminary squad. So still kind of around in that sense. Moving on to right backs, we have a definite candidate, Alvin Jones, and he made the squad. And we had likely candidate Jesse Williams, who did not make the squad. Only named to the preliminary squad was Jesse Williams. Instead, the possible candidate Shannon Gomez was selected for the final squad. And then we had Isaiah Garcia, seemingly off the squad, and apparently so, as he was not named to the preliminary squad. We had a couple of general defenders, basically players who have so little play with Trinidad and Tobago that we don't know exactly what position they play. And one of them, Kareem Riley, did make the preliminary squad, but the other one, Jelani Felix, did not. We had him as possible but unlikely, whereas we had Kareem Riley as possible. All right, that does it for the defense, and we move on to midfield and defensive midfielders. So we had noted that Kaleem Highland, the veteran, was off the team, and indeed he is, having last played in July 2021. And we are left with our likely candidate, Nabil Hackshaw, who did make the squad. But our possible candidate, Michel Poon-Angaron, only made the preliminary squad there. Okay, and on to central midfielders. We had a definite candidate in John Paul Rochford, but to our surprise, he was only named to the preliminary squad. And then our first possible candidate was Paul Leston, who wasn't even named to the preliminary squad. But the next three possible candidates were, and that is Ajani Fortune, Daniel Phillips, and Andre Rampersad, all three of them making the final squad. We had a player who seemed to be off the squad in Kevon Goddard, but he at least made the preliminary squad there. And we move on to left midfield, where we had a possible candidate in Dwayne Muckett, and he made the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. He was the only player coded as a left midfielder, but we had two coded as a right midfielder, but we deemed them as seemingly off the squad. So that proved true with Hashim Arcia. He was not selected even for the preliminary squad, but Nicholas Dillon at least made it to the preliminary squad there. On the left wing, we had a definite candidate in Rion Moore. So in one of the surprises, he did not make the final squad, only the preliminary squad for Rion Moore. And instead, left winger Ryan Teffler, who we did have as a likely candidate, was selected for the spot. Our possible candidate, Marcus Joseph, not even named to the preliminary squad there. Okay, on the right wing, we had a likely candidate in Cale Overy, and he did make the squad. But our possible but unlikely candidate, Jumoul Francois, not even selected to the preliminary squad. And then we had one player coded as a general midfielder. We're not sure where he plays in the midfield because he's only been with the team since 2023. And we had him as possible but unlikely. So, but he did make the squad. Justin Sadu, a surprise selection there. Okay, among attacking midfielders, we begin with Judah Garcia. Now, that's a bit of an interesting case. We didn't report an injury on him in the part one in May, because he wasn't injured at that time. He picked up his injury in early June, and it's actually an unknown injury and an unknown return date that he's coded with. However, he was selected to the squad, so a bit of an injury concern perhaps. But Judah Garcia, one of our three likely candidates selected for the squad. Jovan Jones was another likely candidate there. He too was selected, as was Malik Khan. All three of our likely candidates making the squad. We had four possible candidates as well. And Kevin Molino, who actually was expected to be injured, or sorry, at least we expected him to be injured because he had gone in for knee surgery. And he did that, and he returned playing for his club at the beginning of June. What a hero. So he is selected to the squad, Kevin Molino. Perhaps it was just a small surgery, or obviously because he's back playing one game for his club, then he was off the bench for a while. So I'm not sure he's fully recovered. Also, in the same situation, Andre Fortune, did we report that in June? He was out injured for the March games, but Andre Fortune was back playing around June 10th, like Kevin Molino. However, he was only named to the preliminary squad, so perhaps he didn't recover enough to make this squad, or we only had him as a possible candidate, so it could be that he simply wasn't selected, maybe the injury exacerbating his ambitions there. Jamal Williams was our third possible candidate. And also Matthew Wooling, and both of those made the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. So Jamal Williams, Matthew Wooling on the preliminary squad only. And we had one possible but unlikely candidate in Nathaniel James, but he did make the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. Now we move to the forwards. And we had a likely candidate, actually the only likely candidate, the only candidate indefinite or likely was Levi Garcia, and he was selected to the squad. And we had Rundle Winchester as a possible candidate, but he wasn't selected even for the preliminary squad. Possible but unlikely was Kadeem Corbin, and instead he made the squad. So a bit of a surprise there. And we had Isaiah Lee as seemingly off the squad. and he wasn't selected for the preliminary squad. So it looks like he was off the team. And our only new candidate here is Malcolm Shaw. So Malcolm Shaw, newly added to the team, so I'll tell you a little bit about him. He was born in Canada. Perhaps he had been hoping to get on the Canadian team, but he's 28 years old now and still doesn't have a cap for Canada or Trinidad and Tobago. Actually, I don't think he was close to reaching Canada's team. So just recently joined. He had never even been on the bench for Trinidad and Tobago. I think this happened in the last few months or even weeks. And he plays for Atletico Ottawa in Canada and was with a couple of teams in Sweden before that. So Malcolm Shaw, new to the squad there. And finally, we had a couple of players categorized as general attackers, and one of them was the possible but unlikely Real Gil, but he did make the squad, so good for him, surprising us there. And the player we had seemingly off the squad was Samori Powder, and Samori Powder was named to the preliminary squad, so both of those guys doing a bit better than we expected. Okay, and so that's it. Just one player that wasn't on our radar added to the team, and then a few players that were on our radar and a few players that weren't in the soccer files, which I'll tell you about. Not much more than just mentioning them by name. Perhaps like their auntie is listening and would be delighted to hear at least they've been added to the podcast. So. On the I'm going to do that in the new section down below. So just hold on a minute there and we'll come back to that. All right, we move on to the summary section. So we're going to summarize the notable non-selections and the surprise inclusions. But I'll just say overall that it was pretty much an expected team. So this would be, Trinidad and Tobago's A team, a couple of players left off. But there always are a few, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a B team. So here are the notable non-selections. We had as a likely candidate the central defender Justin Garcia. He only made the preliminary squad. And we had a definite, so probably the biggest surprise of all, our definite candidate for left back, Noah Powder. But not just named to the preliminary squad. Not even named to the preliminary squad is a left back that we thought was likely to make it, Keston Julian. So biggest surprises for us there at left back. At right back, there's also Jesse Williams, who we thought likely to make the squad, but only named to the preliminary squad. And I think I should go back and say Keston Julian, not even named to the preliminary squad. So that much more of a surprise for us there. So Jesse Williams, right back, and central midfielder, Jean-Paul Rochford. We considered him a definite candidate. But he only made the preliminary squad. And the same is true with left winger Rion Moore, a definite candidate who was just named to the preliminary squad. So I suppose you could argue that with that number of players, it's a partial B team. I don't really think so. Trinidad and Tobago didn't play in the World Cup. I think there are other reasons for these players missing rather than resting them like Canada and USA are doing. Okay, on with surprise inclusions. Just three of them here. One is the general midfielder, Justin Sadu. We had him as possible but unlikely, as we did with all three of these players, actually. Forward, Kadeem Corbin. Possible but unlikely, but making the squad. And finally, general forward, Real Gil. So we may get to know these players a little better, but generally players at this level are on the bench. So it might be a surprise if we see them maybe subbing in. Okay, now we go on to our new players. So we had, I've lost him in my graphics. We had one new player added to the squad that's going to the Gold Cup, and that is Malcolm Shaw, the forward. And he's the only one. And now I'll cover players that we did have on our radar. These were players that played in June of 2023. That was their first appearance for the team. So Christian Lee Him, Stephen Marcano, Michael Kedman. Yes, all of them called up in June, so they got on our radar that way. Also added to the to the preliminary team that we hadn't talked about in part one, but they had been on our radar, was Nathaniel Garcia. So he last appeared for the national team on the bench in 2019. So we didn't include him in our list. Atuala Guerra is the next one. Also last appeared in 2019, so wasn't on our list. And finally, Canadian-born Luke Singh. He actually played for FC Edmonton, where I'm broadcasting from right here. But he made it to the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. And then some brand new players for us that get onto the radar by being named to the preliminary squad here. So we may see these players in the future. The first one, for instance, Rio Cardenas, is born in 2006. So he's just about 15. No, wait, that would make him about 16 or 17 years old now. So some of these players we might see in the future. Rio Cardenas, Josiah Cooper, Mika Kane, Luke Phillip, and Kahim Thomas. So maybe we will see you guys down the road for Trinidad and Tobago, but that's what we have for the 2023 Gold Cup. So I'm just going to end with a nice pretty graphic here. And okay, that is it. And we will hopefully see you for our next team. Bye.